Of course, the screen would stop recording. Anyways, let's get back right into it from where we left off. Uh, Seahawks. So the Seahawks again looked good with Geno, but like I was saying, they just didn't really play as well as they looked. And I know it sounds crazy because you passed your eye test, right? They looked good. You saw them make the playoffs. You saw them win some games. But what I was in the middle of the saying before the computer said like "fuck you" was Russell Wilson was actually better at EPA, yards per attempt, touchdown interception rate, took fewer sacks, better efficiency with and without play action, inside and outside of the red zone, and overall efficiency. Russell Wilson was actually at a plus 0.16 the entire year, where Geno was negative 0.07 EPA. So, again, just from the statistics, right? Wilson was obviously better. Geno was not so good, but they've got the wins. Why the hell did they get the wins, though? Well, Russell Wilson in 2021 played the third toughest schedule in the NFL, and Geno Smith played the 10th easiest schedule in 2022. So obviously it's going to be a little bit easier to get those wins. Not only did he get the wins against the easiest teams, but more specifically, he played 6 teams that were above average pass defenses, and he went 2-4 in those games. He was also the most sensitive to the blitz. Geno went from being 9th in EPA to 28th in EPA when he was being blitzed. Last year, Seattle and Pete Carroll has something against Russell Wilson. I don't know what the hell he did, but Pete Carroll really, really tried. He pulled out all the stops, put all the players around and all that kind of stuff. He did the right thing with like passing on first downs, putting in heavier sets and passing out of that, just running less frequently, especially on early downs, all that kind of stuff. And they did a good job. They got the wins. They got what they needed, and Geno Smith looked great, right? The problem is, one, it's going to get harder this year, and two, there's not really a lot else to do. Even throughout the book, right, and even if you just go back and watch the tape, I don't know what the answer would be. And usually, like as a fan, right, we can say some dumbass shit and just be like, oh, well, I think this would work. I don't know. I really don't know what else they can do to get even more efficiency out of Geno Smith. I think he's kind of at his limit, right? He's reached that peak. You're not going to get much more out of him. You have receivers. You can't really ask for anything better than what you have without, like asking for the number one guy in the NFL. And running back wise, maybe you can improve there, but that's not really where you're efficient anyways. So I don't know what else you would do to help this team. But either way, they're going to roll with what they got. I do think they're going to take a step back. I think you're going to see a lot of this regression finally hit them in this year. I wouldn't be surprised if they get some wins, but we see the Seahawks and individual players within the Seahawks struggle, right? Not just Geno, but guys like DK, guys like Metcalf. Guys like Tyler Lockett not be as great as they were last year, and just have a lot of the negativity kind of spread through everybody. Also, just kind of a side nugget on the Seahawks, they never scored more than 16 points when they played outdoors. So they played outdoors 3 times, and 16 was like the very top of what they could do outdoors. So maybe that's just like an anomaly, but just keep that in mind, because if they do play outdoors this year, and I know that they do, we kind of take a look at that, because that seems to really impact Geno Smith. Next, though, is the Bucs. Offensive line, terrible last year. 25th in pass block win rate, 31st in the run block win rate. Brady saved their ass. I mean, there's nothing short of that. Brady had the number 1 fastest time to throw. Baker Mayfield is coming in this year, and he actually holds the ball longer than the average NFL quarterback over the last 2 years. So over the last 2 years, Brady has been number 1 and number 2 in sack rate, as well as getting the ball out quickly. Mayfield has ranked 71st and 72nd. When drives take sacks, just like statistically, they're a lot less likely to put up points. Typically, it's like, I want to say 20% of the time you actually end up putting up some sort of point, and that's including field goals, right? So, assuming the Baker's going to come in here, the offensive line has not really been touched. They haven't done anything to add to the offensive line. They haven't really done anything huge to add to, receivers or anything like that. All they did was bring in Mayfield, and they're expecting him to step in and take over Tom Brady, and that's just, it's crazy to me that they would even have that assumption. Some prop plays that I want to add in here And I know this is something we're going to touch on later, but I'm just going to throw it in now because I looked and nobody has a prop up yet. Baker Mayfield over half an interception, and then also the Vikings over half a sack for week 1. And the Vikings not really known for getting a lot of defensive pressure, but against this Bucs offensive line, give me them to get a sack, and it's probably going to be like half or 1.5. I really would not go more than 1, just because the Vikings defensive line is not that great. But we'll get into the game script here and you know what, let me just do it now. Game script as far as what I'm seeing in this game, really one of two things. So one, the Bucs come out, they run the ball efficiently because the Vikings don't have a great defensive line. They get where they need to get, they put up the points, and the Vikings, are having to kind of play catch up, and they're not able to. If that's the case, give me the under. But even in that situation, Baker Mayfield at some point is going to have to throw, and he's going to be under duress, and he's one of the worst quarterbacks to match up with this terrible offensive line. So I still like the over half an interception. The only reason I don't bet the under is because the opposite could happen, and probably the more likely option is the Vikings get out to a lead, the Vikings start running crazy, or they start passing crazy, I should say, against this Buccaneers team who has a weaker secondary now that they've had guys like Sean Murphy-Bunting leave, and the Browns are forced to throw to stay in the game at least, right, or try to come back in the game. And if that's the case, you're going to be asking for Baker Mayfield to, 1, come back, from being down, 2, probably hold the ball a little bit longer to let plays develop because they need bigger chunk plays in that case. And then 3, you're asking Baker Mayfield to play behind this offensive line in a scenario where they know he's going to be throwing, and it's just not a good mix. So in that situation, I still obviously have him throwing at least 1 interception, if not multiple interceptions. And 2, we still have the Vikings getting a sack because it's, again, most likely since he's taking more dropbacks. However, in that scenario, the Vikings may push this game pretty high, and even get them pretty close to the over by themselves. It's 45.5, and this is not a divisional game, so it doesn't fit like our mold for divisional, first matchups. So I could see the Vikings putting up 35 points and Tampa Bay scoring like 20 and just pushing this game over. So I'm not touching the under, but I am going to take the props on this game for Minnesota to get 1 interception, or Baker Mayfield specifically to throw over half an interception. And then if you're like me and you think they're going to get the sack, take Minnesota plus a half a sack as well, or over half a sack. But the one I'm most confident about, and the one I really, really love for week 1, is Baker Mayfield to throw over half an interception. So, of all that, let's get back into this Bucs breakdown. Of 33 quarterbacks, Baker ranked 31st in EPA. Baker is 37.5 against the spread. 37.5% against the spread, which is also known as the absolute worst in the last 3 years. So if you do like Minnesota to just outright win the game, or cover the spread, I don't blame you. I'd be very tempted myself. Like I said, there's really only one scenario in which I don't see them covering, and that's if Tampa Bay is somehow manages to run on this team, and the Vikings have a really shitty defensive line. Even with some of the improvements they made, I don't think they're going to be great at stopping the run, and since Tampa Bay wants to run the ball, I could see this game being a little bit closer, like I was saying earlier, and Tampa Bay maybe even pulling out an upset because Minnesota, again, is due for a lot of regression themselves. So I'm not really playing that. If anything, I may look to put that in a teaser, like giving Minnesota minus the half, and then just kind of tease that with another leg. But that's for another show. All that being said, the Bucs run game also ranked dead last in yards per carry and yards after contact. Again, a lot of that has to do with the offensive line. And most of you know this, but without an offensive line or a defensive line, the offense and defense can only be so good, right? You have to get pressure if you're on defense. You have to protect against that pressure if you're on offense. It's just the way the NFL works, or football works in general. Over the last 5 years, though, rookie quarterbacks in the first 4 weeks are 10-29. The Bucs play 4 rookies. However, they play them towards the end of the season when we see rookies take a jump forward. So the best games that they would have a chance to win this year would be against rookie quarterbacks. The only problem is they're playing them in the latter part of the season. So even the games that right now we would think maybe they should win, you can't really bank on that because some of those rookies are going to look much better, halfway through the season or at the end of the season. But anyways, that's enough on shitting on the Bucs. You know how I feel about them. I also hate their coach. Next is Titans. Titans had first down runs had negative 0.13 EPA, and they saw heavy boxes 87% of the time. So basically, every time they went out there, the defense was going to play the run, right? Like every single time. And they just did not deviate from that play calling. The Titans also had the number 3 most losses after leading by a touchdown at some point in the game because of the poor game management. So even when they got a lead, they just didn't know how to keep it because they kept trying to run on first downs. They keep trying to do all these like negative expected value stuff. The Titans actually had a plus 26 point margin in the first quarter, meaning that they were typically winning at the end of the first quarter, right? Or they're putting up a pretty good first quarter. But they had 48% of their drives go 3 and out in the second half. That's the absolute worst from last year. So starting off hot, getting some points, at least staying in the game if not winning or leading at halftime, only to come out in the second half and not be able to do jack shit on offense. Just not a good, offensive coordinator at that point, obviously, right? Like somebody needs to step in and say, hey, look, we're being too predictable here. They're playing the run. There's a couple things that they can do to kind of, alleviate this. Number one, pass more on first down. It's that easy. Just pass more on first down, regardless of the set, regardless of what's going on. Just pass on first down, doing more play action. Again, teams are thinking you're going to run, lean into that. Use the play action to your advantage. Stop the linebackers. Keep everybody up front and pass over it. Pass more of the heavy sets. Use the 12 personnel, be able to pass out of that, make it look like a run, just like the 49ers do. Make it look like the run and turn it into a pass. If they can do that stuff, they can turn this around real quick. They still have the players to do it. They have Mike Vrabel as an overall head coach. I think is good enough to do that. And now they have DeAndre Hopkins, right? So they should be using him. Throw the ball. Get that guy open. Use what the hell you're paying for. And they have a shot to win that division if they make those changes. If they don't, it's just going to be another shitty losing season for them. Next is the Bills. This one I'm not going to really spend too much time on. They're the Bills. They're great. And just going to be kind of slobbing on their knob here for a minute. But the Bills didn't really run much on early downs last year, which is a good thing. They ran about 30% of the time on early downs. But when they did run, they were very efficient. So the year before, they were 30th in efficiency on early downs. This year, they're going to first, or last year to say, they went to first in yards per carry, second in success rate, and fifth in EPA when running on early downs. The Bills start the season pretty great, honestly, with the fifth easiest schedule, I should say, over the first 8 weeks. But from November 1st to the end of the year, they have the number 1 overall hardest schedule in the NFL. So if you're looking to fade the Bills, or if you maybe want a time to play them or kind of get off of playing them, November 1st is your day. Mark it down on the calendar. Now, they do need to stack the wins in those early weeks, though, because that second half, like I said, it is a tough schedule. You're going to play Burrow, Wilson, now with Sean Payton, Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Hurts, Mahomes, Prescott, Herbert, Mac Jones is really the only, sort of weakness in there in this schedule. And then you end with Tua. Mac Jones and the Patriots could look a lot better, too, especially now that, he's gotten a little bit better, a little bit more developed, and Bill O'Brien should have that offense looking at least a little bit better. So basically, they need to put wins up in the front. Hopefully, they can get them enough and kind of vault them to like a first or second place finish in the AFC. Excuse me. And if that's the case, the Bills don't really need to change much else. They just need a little bit more luck to go their way. Everybody stay healthy. Josh Allen hurt his elbow last year, so hopefully he can stay in good shape. And just kind of keep doing what they're doing. Their defense, they did add Poona Ford to kind of stop the run against them, and that should help, especially against teams like the Ravens and like the Bengals, who are going to try to run kind of up the middle with Joe Mixon and guys like J.K. Dobbins. So they're making the right adjustments. They're making the right plays. They got the right people in there. They're putting personnel back there. No reason to really fade the Bills. Just, again, know that the first half of the season should be much easier than the second half. The last team here, and I saved them for last because they are just the worst. And this is one of the teams I hate even more. I should say, hate's a proper word. But the Raiders, the Raiders, like I said, they're the only team that I've put out here as an official season-long play under 7.5 wins. I've been saying that for at least a month now, and a lot of this is just due to Josh McDaniels. Guys, if you've been listening to this channel for any amount of time, you know it always comes back to the coaches for me, and Josh McDaniels is just the absolute, like, DFL, right? Like, just dead fucking last as far as coaches are concerned. Every offense he's been a part of since 2009 has just been dog shit. 2009 he was with Denver, 2010 he was with Denver, he got fired halfway through that 2010 season, and then 2011 he goes to the Rams, and it was shit with the Rams too. The Rams, he was not head coach, he was part of the offense, but they put up literally the worst offense in the NFL with him as part of their offensive coordinating in 2011. It just, in both of those stops, not only was he terrible, he was actually worse than the prior coaches he was replacing. So the coach lost their job because they couldn't win. They're underperforming. They bring in McDaniels, and he does even fucking worse. Like, it's embarrassing. I don't even know why this guy has a job. I think I've said that before, or at least this job, the head coaching job. In 2019, he was in New England, and if you remember, that was the last year Brady played there, and the offense looked just terrible. They couldn't do shit. They couldn't move. Without Brady, that team would have been like a 2-14 team. But Brady saved his ass, sort of, at least. In 2020, without Brady, McDaniels looked obviously even worse. And then it happened again last year. So all these teams that are looking worse once he's really ingrained in the offense. In 2021, the Raiders were 10-7 with Gruden and like interim coaches and things, and they made the playoffs. In 2022, last year, McDaniels coached them to 6-11. So not just did he get 4 less wins. Remember what happened that offseason, because it's not like, oh man, they lost players and their quarterback and whatever else, defensive players. No, like, most of the team was still there. They kept most of that team intact specifically for him because the team was not bad. When Gruden left, it was all that email bullshit that had him fired. But you kept the quarterback, you kept Hunter Renfrow, you kept Darren Waller, you added Devontae Adams, top 10 receiver in the damn NFL, and they did worse. Not only did they do worse, yes, Renfrow and Waller got hurt, but in the first 7 games, the first 7 weeks, they were still 1-6, and that's with both of them healthy. So it's not like an injury issue. It's not like Derek Carr got injured in to game 2, and this is what happened. No, like, this team looked shitty from the beginning with full health. Carr also decreased in every stable metric last year. Stable metrics are things like passing from the pocket, passing at first down, open passes without pressure, all that kind of stuff. All of that was shit. The one thing they did do great, and it's just kind of the silver lining of all this, right, is the Raiders were really great in first halves. They could at least kind of script out that first half, do decently. They ranked 8th in points per drive in the first half, which is good, but it's not because they scored a whole shit ton of touchdowns. They really mainly got field goals. They could drive it pretty well. They could, get down the field a little bit, but they couldn't. Most of the time, they weren't going to complete that. And then lastly, the field goals that they got weren't even like chip shots. It's not like, they got down to like the 25 and stalled out. 11 of their field goals came from beyond 50 yards. It is what it is, but it's just obviously not good. Carr did pass well out of one particular personnel set, and that was the 12 personnel, which again, 1 running back, 2 tight ends. You can tell the 12 personnel is kind of popular in the NFL. It's obviously the 11 personnel is the most popular, but 12 is probably second or third. And that's because you kind of keep your quarterback a little bit cleaner. You get some more blockers in there. It's a little bit harder to defend against. When passing from that 12 personnel, though, Carr was at a plus 0.13 or plus 0.13 EPA, 53% success. Not like elite, but good at least. The only thing is, and what really held him back, is that McDaniels only used that personnel set 10% of the time. So you have something that your quarterback's doing well, that your team can really lean into, and you're not even like attempting to help them here. The stats for Carr specifically dropped to negative 0.01 and 41% success when using 11 personnel, which is the main personnel that he used. In week 5, Darren Waller did get hurt. He didn't return until week 15, so that makes it a little bit harder to run that 12 personnel, right, because you have 1 tight end hurt. But still, it's a pretty decent amount of time from weeks 5 through 15. That's about 10 weeks. Throughout those 10 weeks, they threw out of the 12 personnel 6 times, 6 passes in 10 weeks. That's what happened. Of those 6 passes, though, all 6 of them were completed. Carr had a 1.16 EPA and 83% success. Now, it's obviously a small sample size because they didn't fucking use it, but he looked good while he was doing it. So now Carr's gone, Darren Waller's gone, Jimmy G's coming in. Jimmy G was obviously playing with the 49ers last year. The 49ers run a shit ton of 12. The way that they use him with the 49ers is a lot like the way they should have been using Carr last year. A lot of short passes, to guys like Debo, using Christian McCaffrey, using these athletic offensive linemen, using Brandon Ayuk, sometimes deep, but a lot of times short, just kind of getting him in some open space, letting him work. Using a lot of 12 personnel, especially with George Kittle there. That's not going to be the case unless the Raiders take a dramatic turnaround and just do like a 180. He's going to mostly be running out of 11 personnel. From 11 personnel specifically, Garoppolo averages 5 yards per attempt. That's going to be, again, DFL, just like dead fucking last in the NFL if that is going to keep up this year. All of that, right, it just shitting on him a lot. Makes it seem like, man, like maybe this dude's a defensive coach. Maybe he should be a defensive coordinator, because this is usually what we see from defensive coordinators when they try to run a team, is that they try to be real conservative with it. That's not the case, though. The defense ranked bottom 5 last year, even though they played the easiest schedule of offenses. Out of the whole NFL, they played the easiest schedule of offenses. Now, this year, they're going to be playing the AFC East. So you're going to have Aaron Rodgers come to town. You're playing Josh Allen and the Bills, and you're playing Tua. On top of that, just within their own division, they're playing the Chargers, right? They have Kellen Moore now, who's going to run an up-tempo, quick offense with a lot of points. You're playing the Broncos, who now have Sean Payton. And then, of course, you play the Chiefs twice a year. This is going to be a shit-tastic just year for the Raiders. I've said that. I bet the under 7.5. I don't know what else to tell you. I bet the damn under for Broncos Raiders week 1 at 44.5. It's all there. So just know we're going to be fading the Raiders a lot this year. Best thing that could happen to us is it ends up being a close game, right? Like Denver and Raiders, especially because Sean Payton, that is, can start a little bit slow. Best case scenario, this game is like 17-14, something like that. And then Vegas gets the benefit of the doubt going into next week. And we can take, just basically fade the shit out of them every single week until the lines catch on. Speaking of game 1s, though, and that play in particular, McDaniels has coached in 3 week 1s, right, as a true official head coach. He has scored 12 points, 17 points, and 19 points, going 1-2 in those week 1 openers as a head coach. The only win he had, it was the win where he won by scoring 12 points, which is obviously the least that he scored. So this year in week 1, he's going up against Denver, who still has an amazing defense. If you didn't see that video, Denver has just top tier elite defense, who just kind of gave up and didn't give a shit the last couple weeks of the year, but it's still there. Sean Payton's coming to town. This team is rejuvenated. You have the Raiders playing against a great defense with a Jimmy Garoppolo who's coming off an injury, who knows how much time he's really going to have to prepare and actually be with this team. There's no Darren Waller. Josh Jacobs isn't even in the damn stadium right now working out or anything like that. You just have a lot of issues with this team, so give me that under all day, every day. Look to take the team total under, all that kind of stuff. I don't see this Raiders team scoring more than 17 points week 1. So that's it. That's a wrap on the reviews. Thank you for sticking with that. Hopefully you picked up on some of the picks here. You guys have a great day. I will be back here next week. We'll go over the plays. Next week is the Hall of Fame week. So we'll look into that a little bit more. We'll actually look ahead to week 1 of the preseason, and then we'll take it from there. So you guys have a great day, great weekend, great everything. Hopefully you guys are enjoying your summers while it's still there. Look at the affiliates below, again, MyBookie and GT Bets. We're looking at the GT Bets page right now, and I will talk to y'all soon.